I know for me as an actor, I love playing with women because it allows you much more variations. You can be coy, you can be funny, you can flirt. There's a lot of things that you can't do with the guy.
If someone is kissing you passionately, you start to feel passion. It's inescapable to my mind, unless, well, I don't know, unless you're absolutely frigid or something, and in which case you'd better be a good actor.
You could get far more romance and far more sexuality, probably, in the minds of the people viewing the picture by doing the things the way they did them.
There was no cleavage. If there was a shadow, they had to retouch it out in a still, or they put netting across the top of costumes often.
I think now it's kind of, oh, they're taking their clothes off again, you know, get some popcorn. It isn't that exciting anymore. In fact, I think that probably the more discerning people in the audience are saying, hey, it's really stopping the movie.
Turn your back. Did you ever hear the story about Willie the Weeper made his living as a chimney sweeper? He had the dope habit, and he had it bad. Listen while I tell you about a dream he had. Marvin.
Madge. At the time when Betty Davis was...
Quando Betty Davis seduziu Richard Lattermas em Escravos da Terra, o cinema falado tinha 4 anos e Hollywood vivia a era mais liberal da sua história. Estava sintonizada com os tempos. Afinal, o cinema raramente cria um gosto popular. Simplesmente procura satisfazê-lo, principalmente no que se refere a questões sexuais. Como meio de entretenimento de massa, o cinema não pode chocar muita gente, mas faz tudo para oferecer ao público o que ele deseja. No início da década de 30, o público americano tinha se tornado cínico com a depressão e demonstrava um forte desejo de ver as heroínas glamourosas como Davis ou Dietrich, Jean Harlow ou Barbara Stanwyck perderem a virtude, fosse por prazer ou por dinheiro.
Yeah, I like it here. How about a job? Oh, now, don't tell me in this great big building there ain't someplace for me.
Have you had any experience?
Plenty. I'd rather wait in there. I hate crowds. Don't you?
The boss won't be back for an hour.
Well, then why don't we go in and talk this over?
Diamonds should only be worn by beautiful girls.
Oh, it's just adorable.
I'd like to do a lot of things for you, Queenie. How would you like an apartment all your own, say on Park Avenue? And a car all your own. Perhaps a Rolls Royce. Oh, and a lot of nice things.
Well, I'd have to think about that. So gentlemen prefer blondes, do they? Yes, they do.
It was not, however, as a...
Mas não foi como loira e sim como ruiva do título do filme que Jean Harlow provocou a indignação de grupos de censura contra o que classificavam como evidência da crescente imoralidade na tela.
It was a very sexy story for its day. The main thing that offended sensiboards around town was the obvious fact that she was having one affair after another without the benefit of clergy.
We've got to step out of it, both of us.
Oh, why? We can see each other. You can come to my place anytime.
No, I won't do that.
Nobody will ever know about it, please.
I won't, Red.
Listen, tomorrow night. Say you'll come tomorrow night. Listen, 10 o'clock. You say...
Don't, Red.
All right, then. Say you'll come. Say it.
All right, I'll come.
Com o agravamento da depressão, aumentou o desemprego feminino e a prostituição. Para muitas mulheres, a venda do sexo tornou-se o único meio de sobrevivência, e assim como na vida real, também no cinema. Em A Ponte de Waterloo, Mae Clarke interpretou uma corista levada pela pobreza a oferecer o corpo nas ruas.
doing well, aren't we? What time is it? Past 11. I'm going down to Waterloo Bridge. Might have some friends coming in on leave from Waterloo Station. Well, I'll go down to Trafalgar Square. Might be some friends of mine coming in from Downing Street.
Naturalmente, era preciso que ela sofresse por esse pecado mortal, e não fazia diferença o fato de ter sido por necessidade que ela cometeu esse pecado. O diretor James Whale ensaiou com a atriz a cena em que ela demonstra o remorso adequado.
He said, now, you know that you were going out onto the streets. You're going to betray this love that's been offered to you. You're no good. You hate yourself. Reach out and get the perfume bottle. Squirt it. So I reached out of scene and placed it here and went, shh, shh. And the whole time I'm looking in the camera like, I hope you see what a degraded, horrible, she was doing it in utter distaste, hatred, had to be. She had to pay the rent and eat the food. It was like the last resort, nothing else to do.
Qualquer pretexto e às vezes nenhum era usado para mostrar as heroínas e coristas com pouca roupa, até mesmo nuas. Aqui, Dolores Del Rio aparece totalmente nua, com Joel McRae um pouco mais discreto em 1931. As pressões para moralizar a indústria já eram muito grandes quando surgiu Mae West vendendo sexo com a sutileza de um camelô. Santa Não Sou, um filme em que ela se diverte e faz o sexo parecer divertido, foi o maior sucesso da Paramount em 33. Não era tanto o que dizia, mas o jeito como dizia.
I made my decision.
Good. I'm glad you made up your mind so quickly.
Oh, very quick in a slow way. You see, I can't discuss it over the phone. It's got a lot of angles to it. You better come up and see me.
Well, I'll be glad to. In fact, I'll come over right away if it's convenient for you.
Most convenient. I'll tell you this much. You're going to like what I got in mind. Uh-huh. I'll be ready. Goodbye.
Apesar da sua popularidade ou por causa dela, foi Mae West a principal causa do surgimento da Liga de Decência Católica Romana em 33. Essa organização desaprovava o sexo, especialmente a exibição da sexualidade feminina, e via Mae West e suas imitadoras como perigosas corruptoras da moral do país. Num gesto destinado a proteger a população, a Liga passou a analisar os filmes antes do seu lançamento, classificando-os em 3 categorias: aprovado, sujeito a objeções parciais e condenado. Essas conclusões eram anunciadas de púlpitos espalhados pelo país. E a mensagem era reforçada por cartazes que diziam: assistir a um filme indecente é uma entrada para o inferno. Além dos católicos, outros grupos de pressão uniram-se, formando o que se tornaria um movimento destinado a moralizar a Hollywood. Para contrabalançar essa ameaça externa e o fanatismo decorrente, a própria indústria ressuscitou seu código de autocensura, o Código Reis, elaborado em 1930 e mais ou menos ignorado desde então. O código foi atualizado, ganhando o selo de aprovação da indústria. Sem ele, nenhum filme de Hollywood podia ter esperança de ser distribuído.
Its broad general purpose is to ensure screen entertainment which will be reasonably acceptable to our patrons everywhere. Entertainment which is definitely free from offense. It does mean quite definitely that the vulgar, the cheap, and the tawdry is out. There is no room on the screen at any time for pictures which offend against common decency, and these the industry will not allow.
Foi Jane, a companheira de Tarzan, a primeira a sofrer os efeitos dos novos regulamentos que controlavam a nudez. Suas roupas curtas, mas funcionais na selva, foram proibidas.
I'm not saying you should wear it in a drawing room or Buckingham Palace or anywhere. I suppose it was very skimpy, it was. And in certain shots, I suppose, might have little G-string would go to one side or the other, and they just thought that was the time. Nowadays, nobody would think of it. If I got this sort of Mother Hubbard, short Mother Hubbard outfit that they put on me, oh, you wouldn't believe it. It was horrible. Piece of leather from neck to knee.
O código estava em vigor e permaneceria por 30 anos, amarrando o pessoal do cinema numa camisa de força de regulamentos, da qual era praticamente impossível escapar.
When there was a kissing scene, you could only have the lips together for 8 seconds. Well, you know, that's kind of a short shift, as we say. And you had to come out of the kiss with the lips sealed. And so I'd be shooting a scene, and this woman would be holding up her stopwatch to show me there's 5, 6, 7, out, okay, break, keep the lips together.
Then there was a matter of cleavage. You could only show 1.5 inches in a close-up or a medium shot, but if you were in a long shot, you could have 2 inches. But it was a rule book, and it had to be followed, or else they'd scrap your film.
I had a scene in the film with Spencer Tracy and Lana Turner, and it was a scene in her bedroom just before she was about to go to the hospital and have the baby. And I played the scene, I thought, very beautifully. He sat at the end of the bed and talked to his wife, and about what will we name the child. It's, you know, nice, warm scene, lovely music, fireplace, snow outside, you know, the whole mess. Hey, the censorship said, you can't do it, a man can't sit on a bed with a lady. I said, no, it's no lady, it's my wife, you know, it's that old joke. I said, but it's his wife, she's about to give birth to a baby. I wouldn't do it. And they made us go back and made Spencer sit in a chair opposite. Well, that got me kind of going.
Mrs. Higbee thinks it's going to be a girl.
Well, sure it is. Emily Timberlake, the first woman president of the United States.
Oh, I don't think Emily would want to live in Washington.
Emily's going to live where she wants to,
Like her mother.
like her mother.
The whole making of a film was simply made with hands tied behind one's back. It was extremely difficult because people were not allowed to behave as they would normally behave in a given situation. They behaved in the way that the movie actors behave.
Um efeito curioso do código é que as mulheres não podiam mais aparecer deitadas de forma provocante envoltas em rendas e cetim. Elas tinham que estar fazendo alguma coisa. Agora as mulheres trabalhavam e se divertiam com os homens, sem o inconveniente das pressões sexuais. E, principalmente, nas chamadas comédias malucas, as mulheres eram iguais ou superiores aos homens.
Who is she?
Oh, darling, I hope I wouldn't have to answer that.
Come on.
Well, Dorothy is really my daughter. You see, it was spring in Venice, and I was so young I didn't know what I was doing. We're all like that on my father's side.
By the way, how is your father's side?
Oh, it's much better, thanks. And yours?
Say, how many drinks have you had?
This will make 6 martinis.
All right. Will you bring me 5 more martinis? Leo, line them right up here.
Yes, ma'am.
You realize that you've made a perfect spectacle of yourself. Have you finished?
Oh, yes.
Oh! Don't you stand there. Do something. Oh, my goodness. Well, get behind me.
I am behind
Well, get
you.
closer.
I can't get any closer now. Now, you ready? So be calm. Left foot first.
All right.
You're such a smart Alec. Nobody knows anything but you. I'll stop a car, and I won't use my thumb.
What are you going to do?
The system on my own.
Os diretores eram obrigados a ser criativos e sutis, a sugerir sexo em vez de mostrá-lo. Os mais talentosos gostaram do desafio.
Each film I've tried to do it with love scene differently. Some are expressed through anger and shouting and fighting. Some are very soft and gentle and so on. But now when it came to this here, I thought Garbo could do it. I don't know whether I could have done it with another actress to do it as well as that. But here she is in love for 3 days and nights. And now they're going to separate. So the first thing I said, why don't you just try to remember the whole room? Because this was 3 days and nights of paradise. Instead of making love to Gilbert, go through this room. And intuitively, she caught that feeling right away. And she moves beautifully. You know, very few people on the screen can walk well, even just walk well. And it's like poetry. It was done to music. It was choreographed.
Nessa transição do sexualmente sublime para o saudavelmente ridículo, os Estados Unidos encontraram uma pequena deusa venerada por uma década. Com ela, Hollywood descobriu o poder do filme de família.
Well, I gotta be running.
Well, maybe, could I help you?
No, it's a very special job. My father won't even do it. I'll see you later. Bye.
I'll never be able to get a man, much less hold him. No glamour. No glamour at all.
Em 1941, os Estados Unidos entraram na guerra. Começou então uma era de separações e romances casuais. Uma realidade que Hollywood quase não mostrava em sua proposta de escapismo. Uma notável exceção foi o incomparável Casablanca, o mais romântico de todos os filmes. Sua história tem a guerra como pano de fundo.
I would say the romance had to be a little more frenetic, had to be a little more positive, because you were playing against the time. It wasn't the time when you could, sit under an apple tree and have a little flirtation. This was a time when things were happening, and so I think the romance was much more urgent.
Frank, for your thoughts.
In America, they'd bring only a penny, and I guess that's about all they're worth.
I'm willing to be overcharged. Tell me.
And I was wondering
Yes.
why I'm so lucky, why I should find you waiting for me to come along.
Why there is no other man in my life?
Uh-huh.
That's easy. There was. He's dead.
I'm sorry for asking. I forgot we said no questions.
Only one answer can take care of all our questions.
Mesmo quando o Casablanca sugeria sutilmente uma paixão sexual, Howard Hicks celebrava os atrativos das mamárias em O Proscrito, um filme em que o flagrante desrespeito ao código provocou disputas com a censura durante 6 anos. Enquanto isso, a publicidade fez dessa estrela de atributos extravagantes, Jane Russell, um símbolo sexual, antes dela aparecer na tela pela primeira vez.
There's a rock under here.
Okay, let me fix it.
Let me go.
Hold still, lady, or you won't have much dress left.
Let me go.
I think the main ballyhoo was about a scene where I had to pull the covers up over Billy. You know, I had a low-cut blouse on again. Now, in the rape scene, I had a high neck. But in this one, there was no monkey business, so I pulled this blanket up this way, and I'm leaning over the bed, and the camera was right across the bed from me. So there was much too much cleavage. And Greg Toland, the cameraman, said, we're going to have to change that angle, boss, I'm sorry. And he changed the angle, and we shot it again. Well, Howard, in the final cut, wanted that scene in, that shot. There was no excuse for it, no rhyme, no reason. He just wanted to break the band. And they weren't going to allow him to, so it just went on and on and on. He had everybody's curiosity build up to such a point that they were going to go and see it if they had to walk on hot coals. And when they got there, I think they were disappointed, you know.
Quando finalmente o proscrito foi lançado e recebido com decepção, a guerra já tinha acabado e um estado de espírito diferente tomava conta do país.
The soldiers came back and really felt that something had happened to these women who were no longer just in the home. They were out and they had jobs and they had their own lives and kind of independence that was very threatening. And what you see again and again throughout the films of noir is this kind of fear of the woman as a black widow, some dangerous, mysterious, conniving, manipulative villain. And I think it expressed some real fears that men had about what had changed in their absence.
Surge assim uma nova fantasia masculina, a mulher traidora, cuja aparência sugeria sempre problemas. Por mais que um homem tivesse visto ou feito, ela tinha sempre visto ou feito muito mais. Mas quem era essa mulher? Alguém como Elizabeth Scott ou Veronica Lake, Maureen Bacall ou Ava Gardner. Em Gilda, ela foi Rita Hayworth, páreo e tanto para Glenn Ford, o homem da sua vida.
I didn't know how the picture was going to end, number one. We'd be given the script that was written the night before on the morning, and we had to learn it real fast and shoot it that day. We had no idea how the picture was going to end or how a scene would end. And consequently, that lent an air of excitement to the whole thing. And I did indeed fall in love with Rita. And the hate-love relationship in Gilda on the screen is true. And it's, you can't disguise it. Rita Hayworth had to do nothing but just look in the camera, and that just melted you.
Had a shooting up in the Klondike when they got them. Folks were putting the blame on a lady known as you. That's the story that went around, but here's the real lowdown. Put the blame on me, boy. Put the blame on me. Name did a dance called the Hitchy Crew. That's the thing that slew my groove. Put the blame on me, boy. Put the blame on me.
No início dos anos 50, as mulheres voltaram a ser garotas, graças à invenção de uma nova criatura, a teenager, juntamente com os ídolos de matinê que pareciam ter saído do banho e exibiam um sorriso de 64 dentes. Os adolescentes tinham dinheiro e iam ao cinema. Para eles, Hollywood celebrou o amor juvenil numa infinidade de filmes.
That was the time of the boy next door. That was the kid coming home from war. That was the young man trying to get adjusted again. And there were a lot of young people that were out here at that time who were fitted into those parts very well.
It was nice in a way. There was something kind of bittersweet about the naivete of the 50s. You know, Rock Hudson carrying Doris Day down Fifth Avenue wrapped in blankets, you know, police passing the doorman and going through the revolving door and on up. I mean, all those crazy things. They were very kind of simple and nice and sweet.
It was a great time. I really loved it. Anything you wanted, you could do. And they took me from, you know, relative, I mean, I didn't know anything particularly about my craft. And Daryl Zanuck put me in a couple of pictures, and the young people in this country started to pick up on me. They started pumping me in the fan magazines. I became a Bobby Sox idol, a teenage idol, and I loved it. I thought it was great.
Did you feel anything?
All funny inside.
Kind of a tingly feeling?
Yeah. Just like I was floating on a pink cloud.
You know what? I think maybe we are in love.
Do you know what? I think maybe you better kiss me again.
Dodie, will you marry me?
I wanna be kissed by you, just you, nobody else but you. I wanna be kissed by you alone. I couldn't aspire to anything higher than to feel the desire to make you my own. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-doodly-dum. I wanna be loved by you, just you, nobody else but you. I wanna be loved by you alone.
O maior símbolo sexual dos anos 50, talvez o maior até hoje, foi Marilyn Monroe. Sua combinação de sexualidade e inocência era inimitável, mas isso não impediu que os estúdios tentassem produzir uma variedade de clones da sua imagem.
I don't believe that the studio executives knew quite what to do with a blossoming young, sexy actress. They were really dedicated to exploiting them in a way that today it would not be. I had great aspirations as an actress because I'd been doing stage plays, and when they looked upon me, they saw this and that, and blonde hair, which they made blonder, and every time there was a dumb blonde part, I was it. They wanted young girls, childish minds, so they can manipulate you, or, you know, like robots. But it's really unbelievable how they made you look older, but they wanted you very young. But when you got 30, you were too old.
O novo produto de Hollywood era puro e saudável e sugeria mais inocência juvenil do que propriamente paixão. O cinema teve a sua cota de loiras peitudas, mas elas não mostravam nada. Podiam parecer sexy, mas a impressão que se tinha é de que jamais faziam sexo. Para ver um filme que abordasse sexo de maneira adulta, assistia-se um filme estrangeiro, provavelmente europeu. Eles não dependiam de aprovação, talvez porque fossem falados em língua estrangeira, e por isso classificados como filmes de arte. Mas nos Estados Unidos, espíritos mais ousados tentavam apresentar temas mais maduros na tela e ampliar os limites do permissível. Em 53, ingênuo até certo ponto, de Otto Preminger foi condenado, porque, entre outras coisas, usava o palavrão virgem. Preminger não se deixou intimidar e lançou o filme sem o selo de aprovação. E o filme deu um bom lucro. Na mesma época, Tennessee Williams também ajudava o cinema a crescer com adaptações cinematográficas de peças como Um Bonde Chamado Desejo e A Margem da Vida. Todas tratavam da sexualidade reprimida, mas a censura aprovou a sua exibição, com alguns cortes que não foram suficientes para ocultar seus temas básicos.
Do what?
Some awful thing will happen. It will.
What do you? Don't. I'm in danger.
But you would do that.
I would. I will if you.
Wanna have a little rough house, huh? Tiger, rough them, bottom top.
Na época, a Legião Católica de Decência estava decepcionada com a liberalidade da censura. Quando, em 56, Boneca de Carne de Williams recebeu o selo de aprovação, a Legião demonstrou a sua desaprovação.
Came to a head at Baby Doll because the Motion Picture Censorship Board passed it without having first consulted with the Legion of Decency. And so they sort of said, okay, this is it. Now we're going to show you. Now we're going to make an example of this film. And the other thing was that they felt that it was highly immoral that the marriage wasn't consummated. The Catholic Church said that's a sin, and you've made fun of it, and therefore, you know, this film is a no-no for us.
Toda a publicidade em torno de Boneca de Carne fizeram de Carol Baker uma estrela da noite para o dia. E a imagem de uma garota amuada chupando o dedo, uma imagem desejável, mas inabalável, ficou até hoje associada à atriz.
In a certain sense, it's ruined my life, because I'm still called Baby Doll. I mean, it's like my middle name. I don't know. I've often thought I wouldn't mind it so much if, like Marlene Dietrich, it were the Blue Angel. But I mean, there is something about being called Baby Doll.
Símbolo sexual ainda mais jovem, Sue Lyon, de 14 anos, interpretou a ninfeta Lolita, de 12 anos, na adaptação de Stanley Kubrick, do controvertido romance de Vladimir Nabokov. Como Sue Lyon parecia ter 14 anos às vésperas de completar 25, parte do choque da perversão sexual se dissipou. Mas o fato do tema ter sido tratado francamente significava que outro tabu tinha sido quebrado.
We haven't discussed how much.
Oh, something nominal. Let's say $200 a month.
Yes, that's very...
including meals and late snacks,
yes.
etc.
That's very reasonable. Well, it's very nice.
You couldn't find better value in West Ramsdale.
No, well, when would it be convenient for you to have me move in?
Right now. I mean, it would be silly for you to go to a hotel, monsieur.
I've left my bags in the taxi. Yeah, a very persuasive salesman.
Thank you. What was the decisive factor? My garden?
I think it was your cherry prize.
Oh.
Os anos 60 trouxeram a permissividade, mas Hollywood, como sempre, estava atrasada no tempo. O código já estava um pouco mais liberal, mas a nudez continuava proibida. E houve confusão quando o diretor Sidney Lumet decidiu que a proibição deveria ser esquecida em seu filme O Homem do Prego.
Everything about the picture was so fundamental. Life, death, nakedness, dealing with concentration camps, memories of concentration camps. So I thought it was absolutely necessary. And as you know, that picture was released without a seal.
I gotta get me some money. Look. Look. That's it. Look. Look.
Willst du was sehen?
O Homem do Prego abriu a porta da liberdade ou da licenciosidade, dependendo do ponto de vista. Em setembro de 1966, a Associação dos Produtores Cinematográficos anunciou um novo código de produção destinado a ampliar a liberdade do artista criativo. Ela ainda se colocava do lado da virtude contra o pecado, mas já não proibia temas sexuais. Apenas sugeria um certo cuidado na sua abordagem. Em 1968, foi adicionado um sistema de avaliação pelo qual os filmes eram classificados de acordo com a idade. Um dos primeiros filmes a se beneficiar do novo sistema foi A Primeira Noite de um Homem, que tornou-se conhecido como filme símbolo do final da década de 60.
The emblematic film of the late 60s.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes?
For you.
Thank you. Hello?
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes?
It's Benjamin.
Yes?
Benjamin Braddock.
Benjamin, where are you?
Can you look through the glass? Can you see me now?
Yes, I can.
I got a single room,
That's fine.
but there's one thing. The desk clerks seem to be a little bit suspicious. Now, I don't know what the policy is.
Well, do you want to go up first?
Yes, I think that would be good.
I'll be out in 5 minutes.
Oh, goodbye then.
Benjamin,
Yes.
isn't there something you want to tell me?
Tell you?
Yes.
Well, I want you to know how much I appreciate this. Really.
The number.
What?
The room number, Benjamin. I think you ought to tell me that.
You're absolutely right. It's 568.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll see you later, Mrs. Robinson.
Check, please.
No final dos anos 60 e início dos 70, o mundo parecia preocupado com sexo e Hollywood refletiu esse sentimento. Mas em alguns filmes mais sérios, como Ânsia de Amar e Shampoo, com Warren Beatty e Julie Christie, ouviu-se uma advertência.
Driven into a near nervous breakdown by having to maintain a kind of services clientele in every respect, to the point where it was really too much of a good thing for the poor man. I mean, he just finally it was like the postman, rain, snow, or sleet. He had to deliver.
Hope you make it. I don't have your number. Why don't you stop by the shop, okay?
He takes two.
I think there's a line of Julie Christie's who says, "I always used to like being with you because you looked like you were having such a good time. It seemed like so much fun." And he reacts with a good deal of surprise once, because he can't even remember, because he's not a happy person.
See you later. I don't want to know. I don't care.
I'm telling you, you don't know what happened.
I don't care about that girl. I don't care if she's dead.
Norman says you're not collecting for the coffee, Julie.
Well, you know what you can tell Norman. Sorry, I
You
really...
don't understand. I don't take up your time. Don't take up my time because my time is important.
I didn't know what...
You want to stick to hair? Let's stick to
Hey, wait, don't do that with the police. Have Mary do it.
Have
will you?
Mary do what? I mean, you have no respect for me.
I have no...
You can't distinguish between me and one of your goddamn Hollywood lovers.
What?
Numbers.
Talvez as coisas tenham ido longe demais nessa primeira onda de liberdade, e as cenas de nudez e sexo explícito tornaram-se não só aceitáveis, mas quase obrigatórias. A simples nudez não era mais suficiente. Closes das partes íntimas mais visíveis do corpo humano passaram a ser exibidos para excitar o público. Ficou difícil dizer onde acabavam os filmes convencionais e onde começava a pornografia. E o sucesso de bilheteria de Garganta Profunda não contribuiu para esclarecer a questão. Com inveja, os grandes estúdios mergulharam em águas cada vez mais turvas.
The nudity for the sake of nudity without a reason for it. And I find that to be foolish in any script or any movie or a play or whatever the performance might be. But if it really is indigenous to the story and has to be, there's no problem for me to do it. I think also that the writers and directors find that suggesting attitude is far more titillating than direct.
The people who are writing and creating film are confused about how to deal with it. I mean, it's much simpler to deal with good guys, bad guys, and car chases and rocket ships. And it is the mysteries and the quagmire of sexual relations between men and women. I think there's a lot of wondering about it, and people don't know how to show it in a way that still can read. You know, a lot of the language, the imagery of sex on film is dead language now, because how many times can you see two bodies riding on a bed?
Nos anos 80, para conquistar o público jovem, Hollywood mudou radicalmente a situação. Os filmes precisavam de uma classificação que não excluísse os jovens, e temas sexuais não se enquadrariam. Para que filmes com temas sexuais?
Most of our filmmaking is truly geared for younger audiences, for kids essentially who go to the theater, figuring that that's the largest body of theater goers in our country. We don't make a lot of adult films, of adult-oriented and adult-pointed films, and that includes this issue of sexuality and very specific sexuality. It's still quite shocking in our country. We're still very shy about it. We don't speak about it very much, and God knows we don't watch it very often. And it's part of our nature.
Kathleen Turner foi uma das atrizes que nadou contra a corrente, com desempenhos provocantes em filmes como Corpos Ardentes e Crimes de Paixão.
Still intensely difficult and tremendously uncomfortable to do any kind of nudity and to do any kind of passion on screen in front of people. And I find it very disturbing. I usually end up, you know, in the dressing room sobbing after each take. It's just very hard to do, but it was it was there. It was part of the script. There was never any question of whether or not it was worthwhile to me.
O sexo explícito pode estar fora de moda, mas a nudez não, o que coloca as atrizes num dilema difícil. Devem aceitar um papel, por melhor que seja, se ele implica em nudez?
Listen, taxis cost money, food costs money, and rent costs money. Now, you want me to help you out? I expect a lot in return.
Now, if I had said, well, I want to do this part, but I'm not going to pull my dress over my head, I wouldn't have gotten the part. Now, I certainly didn't take the part because of that. I took the part because it was John Landis and Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. And I'm going to turn down the female lead in Trading Places? No way. So I have to take off my dress? Yeah, I did. I certainly didn't like doing it. I'm not proud that I did it. I'm not ashamed that I did it either. It was part of that job. By the way, food and rent are not the only things around here that cost money. You sleep on the couch. I mean, I just took my dress off, and all of a sudden, that was like, oh boy, that's who she is now. Oh boy, discount her. Oh, she's trash. She does that. What do you mean I do that? It was in a comedy. I mean, it was part of the job. It's inconceivable to me how Meryl Streep flashed in Silkwood, and I was like, it was fabulous because it was correct. It was the correct thing for that character to do at that moment. And she knew it, and she did it. I don't understand sometimes why some people get... Kathleen Turner, and these are all people I like and respect and are wonderful, but, you know, certain people can get away with it, certain people can't. I don't know why that is. I really don't. It frustrates me a little bit.
Mas a nudez não é o único problema. Interpretar uma cena de amor não é tão simples quanto parece.
Even when you're writhing on a bed or something, you have to always be aware of where the camera is. And the fact is that you have to give them the shot that you have agreed to do. You have to, I mean, if the director wants to be able to move in on a close-up of your eye or your mouth at a certain point, you've got to make sure it's there.
It's not what people think. I mean, the truth of the matter is, especially if you're in prone positions, as anybody can do with a camera, tell you it's very hard. You can't shoot up the woman's nostrils, you know, or you're blocking her light and all of this, you know, and or you're sitting there and they're shooting up your double chins. And it's awkward angles normally to do. I haven't had that problem. I've always gotten along very well with my leading ladies. I've heard nightmare stories of people not talking to each other until they had to come out and do them. And I mean, you know, it's a tough job, but somebody has to do it.
Com sexo meio fora de moda, o romance reconquistou seu lugar. Em filmes como Tudo por uma Esmeralda e A Joia do Nilo, transparece uma nostalgia dos anos 30, quando Grant e Hepburn, Powell e Lloyd, Cable e Colbert brigavam e se apaixonavam. Da mesma maneira como Michael Douglas e Kathleen Turner, o indiscutível símbolo sexual dos anos 80, brincam, brigam e dão risadas até o romântico final feliz.
I think the attraction is that you held off the sexuality. You allow the characters to develop. You created a banter. You got to like them, like each of them or both of them, before you brought in either the sexuality. And this sort of holding back and letting the audience root for you rather than being there ahead, you know, like trying to make it on the first night, was probably an added plus.
Someday, if I had the money, I'd take you. I'd sail away, just the two of us, around the world and back again. I promise you we'd do that.
Os filmes refletem a época em que são feitos. E o fato de poucos filmes tratarem hoje de temas de sexo explícito tem a ver com a ascensão nos Estados Unidos da chamada maioria moralista e da reação contra a permissividade dos anos 60 e início dos 70. Mas poderíamos também apontar razões comerciais. A maioria do público tem entre 12 e 24 anos, e a censura para 18 anos afastaria uma parte dele. No momento, a tendência é mais para romance do que para sexo. Há pouco tempo atrás, isso não duraria 2 anos. Mas agora não sei. A AIDS entrou em cena e o sexo ficou fora de moda. Ninguém mais faz sexo. Ou já não se faz mais sexo com qualquer pessoa. E isso se refletiu na tela. No último grande sucesso de bilheteria, Atração Fatal, uma história altamente moralista, Michael Douglas faz amor com uma estranha, Glenn Close. Ao sentir-se desprezada, ela se transforma num vírus da AIDS com uma faca na mão.
Darling, this is Alex. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your last name. Alex Forrest. Alex Forrest. This is my husband, Dan. Hi. Glad to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Haven't we met somewhere before?
I don't think so.
No, we have. Weren't you at that party at the Japanese place a few weeks ago? Honey, the exercise book.
Oh, yeah.
You're a lawyer? And you work for the firm of, what's the name? Well, anyway. We've definitely met.
Well, you have a good memory, yeah.
I never forget a face.
YB 851, Fundação Padre Anchieta, Centro Paulista de Rádio e Televisão Educativas. A agenda cultural da cidade no Metrópolis. Hoje, 10h30 da noite. Assista agora Vestibulando.